The 42-0 result had Georgia Tech fans and anybody close to that program coming out like, I think this might be it for Jeff Collins. We were kind of put on alert. Those of us who have had to grind on the weekend duty on Sunday on the news desk, we were like, hey, just a heads up, like this thing might happen today. Is Jeff Collins fired at Georgia Tech, an emergency podcast worthy firing? TBD. But certainly interesting, especially with the way that the move away from Paul Johnson's option-based offense, as he pledged to do when he was hired, has not worked out. Georgia Tech has not finished better than 10th in the ACC in offense in any of the past 3 full seasons. The offense is woeful right now. So Georgia Tech, Auburn, Louisville, which of those jobs is going to be open first?
Georgia Tech.
I'm going to disagree.
What I think you could see Georgia Tech happen. They play UCF.
Yep.
This week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I was pretty impressed with UCF. John Rice Plumlee kind of fixed some of his issues. Of course, I saw him, in person on the game. If they get beat handsomely, like and UC quit, which I do think was a question during the Ole Miss game, I think you can maybe see that move made. But who are you going to say, Auburn?
Well, I think the cost of the buyout, who is doing the firing/hiring, and who do you need to move on quickly to be able to go get, are all factors that fall into this. And I know Stephen Godfrey reported that the buyout for Collins, I think, drops from 11 to 7
on January 1st.
On January 1st, right? I don't know. I don't think Georgia Tech is real flush with cash. Maybe they are, but maybe they're not. If they are, then yeah, make the move. Like you kind of owe it. Maybe you owe it to your kids to try to create a spark, but I don't really know who on that staff would take over. I'll go with Auburn because I think they have a real rough stretch coming. I think I've had a good read on this team. That offense is garbage, and their defense does not quite have the difference makers that they thought they had entering the season. I mean, there's a chance that they lose like 4 out of the next 5. So if you're Auburn, it's pretty clear the boosters don't like the guy anyway. You get a start on your head coaching search. That would be my guess. But Louisville's got a lot of money too, man. And I think that recruiting class is going to fall apart. If they go on a bad run here, I haven't actually looked at Louisville's upcoming schedule.
They got South Florida, another American. So if they lost ugly to them, if they lose that, yeah. And the trend of what's happening recently, like the more teams fire their coach early, like you're saying, to get in line, to get a head start on the next guy, the more pressure there is to do the same and start to get in that mix of that conversation. And I know the Brian Harsin mutiny was pretty popular, but there was another school where the coach flirted around, was too honest about it, and talked about the job interviews. That still is a cloud that is lingering over Scott Satterfield at Louisville that I'm sure people are not forgetting.
Go ahead.
Sorry. The one good thing for Satterfield is that the next 3 games are games in which they're going to be more than a touchdown favorite, I think. Right? So host South Florida, they're probably 10 to 14-ish, I would have to think. At Boston College, I mean, BC right now is – I feel bad for Hafley, man. He lost his quarterback last year, and this year they've already lost 2 linemen after graduating 4 to the NFL. They played one kid this weekend who I didn't have on my roster. He's a walk-on. Started him at left tackle. So, like Boston College, they have a chance to go winless in the ACC. And then at Virginia, and you guys know what I think about this Virginia team. So there's a pretty good chance Louisville goes 3-0 in that stretch. Like better than I think people eyeballing it would realize if they don't pay close attention to some of these ACC teams. And then he's sitting at, 4-2? Okay, you got Pitt, Wake, James Madison comes to town, Louisville, Clemson, NC State, and Kentucky to finish. I think he has a pretty good shot at getting past Halloween without getting fired.
Both Georgia Tech and Louisville are off on the October 15th weekend. And while you mentioned that they should be favorites, I think both of those games, both of them on the road, also present you lose it and this thing is done. Like it is a no-win situation for Louisville. Now, on the Georgia Tech side, because my answer is Georgia Tech, Mike Elko is going to get it done. It's going to be October 8th at home. Duke's going to go in there, a Duke team that is motivated and playing with great vibes against the Georgia Tech team, which might have already been checked out. So at UCF, at Pitt, then Duke at home. If Duke at home goes and gets it done in Atlanta, then when Georgia Tech returns to action the following week on a Thursday night against Virginia, I do not think Jeff Collins is the head coach. So I've got Georgia Tech that off week on October 15th probably open, and then Louisville is dangerous if at BC or at UVA goes south, because then you've got 2 weeks to be able to resettle things before you host Pitt, Wake, JMU, that run that you mentioned right there. I think. Well, all right, when does Auburn happen? November?
What's their schedule like? Let's pull this bad boy up.
I think Auburn happens before Halloween.
They got Missouri.
You got some Auburn guys on that staff who I'm sure they'd love to plug in to get the emotional. Hey, we got an Auburn Tiger man. He understands this stuff.
They got Missouri, LSU. Then they go to Georgia. Then they go to Ole Miss. If they get 2 blowouts to Georgia and Ole Miss, that's probably a spot right there, don't you think?
I think they fire him after they lose at home to LSU.
Wow.
But maybe you let him wear the Georgia loss, right?
Yeah,
and then then you try to get like. There's a lot of guys on that Auburn staff who played at Auburn.
That was
those dudes in.
Did you see the let Cadillac go out there and be the interim coach just for the good vibes?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, CBS did it was cool. They had a breakdown of the Auburn and Penn State staff. Both are littered with former players. It was a cool little segment. Of course it got Gary all excited getting to talk about what do they call it? Talking about dudes or remembering some guys. There was some real guy remembering going on the broadcast where we got to run through the entire Penn State and Auburn staff, talking about how great these old players were.
Can we also discuss how this is not Gary's fault? This is just craziness from Auburn staff. They were telling Gary that Finley is really good when he plays within the structure and terrible when not. Not true. Actually, the complete opposite of true. Yeah, he was terrible within structure. And the only good plays Auburn had in the game were when he was scrambling around, making some things happen. It could not have been more inaccurate.
Yeah. TJ Finley is better when he has to figure out things in a fire drill. And because the Auburn offensive line is bad, that's like all he was doing against Penn State when they were able to have the little amount of success that they did. Of course, none of that success happened when the field got small, as the red zone woes really did in the Tigers in that game. Any other jobs that either from the smell test or talking to people, in anyone else or any school that we should be keeping our eye on in terms of the real hot seat discussion, which again, seats are hotter earlier now than ever.
Colorado, I think.
Yeah, we got the vote of confidence from athletic director Rick George over the weekend. So yeah, it might be it for Carl Durrell.
I mean, you think about this, so AD Rick George did hire Durrell, but it kind of had to happen weirdly timed in the cycle because of the whole Michigan State going and plucking Mel Tucker and giving him double the money for his staff, literally. Durrell's not worked out there. How much is it worth it to Colorado to start this search early? I would say if you're a lower rung team, and Colorado certainly is, I don't know that it makes sense to get out there super early, because you're still going to have to wait to see the domino effect of what the biggest schools do.
To me, it's just got to depend on the locker room, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's just, if you think that this is what needs to happen to avoid the product being wholly embarrassing on the field, then that would be the reason why and look, it's pretty embarrassing right now for Colorado. So if you think that would create a change where all of a sudden you're able to get some competitiveness from that group, then I wouldn't hate it. Neuheisel.
I think let's go. Bring him back. There's a couple, I was just looking at jobs, if there was to keep an eye on, I don't know if it's that close to being weekly, but Neil Brown did have a big win, but they play Virginia Tech this week. If they lose that game at West Virginia, he's clearly something to keep an eye on. The other one that I'm kind of bummed about is Ken Niumatalolo at Navy. Also, the way that unfolded last year with the coordinator. Remember, Remember they fired him, then they brought him back. Like there's just something going on that's a little bit off at Navy. So that's another one. Those were some of the ones that like you feel like it might be near the end, but we'll see what happens.